Hello and welcome to the Sideline Live podcast. My name is Orla Keeling and I am the host of the podcast, where every week we bring you a brand new episode with guests ranging from Olympic champions to local heroes, coaches, support staff and anybody involved in the world of sport. Each week we will dive into different topics, including current affairs in sport, identity, skill, mindset, coaching, and also shine a light on those flying under the radar. So tune in every week for brand new episodes, new stories, and new insights you've never heard before. Okay, delighted to be joined by Alan O'Mara. Alan, you wear a lot of hats. Can you give us your elevator pitch?
Oh God. Yeah, I suppose like my day-to-day work, I'm a mental performance coach, so I work with coaches, athletes and teams in the areas of mainly performance, a little bit of well-being, but I suppose over the years I've been very ingrained in different things with the GAA. I've most recently been an inter-county manager with New York. I've played for Cavan all the way up. I've played football in Ireland and here, podcasted a lot. I've had my own podcast, Your Real Talks, and that's been hugely successful over the years. I've done a podcast series with the GPA, the Player's Voice. So yeah, I suppose over the years I've probably worn too many hats at different times, but I've learned a lot, and that was one of the reasons why I always did it, just the variety and challenging yourself and pushing yourself. But I think heading into this year, I got married last year, and myself and my wife moved from New York to Philadelphia, and at the start of this year I really made a conscious decision that I want to focus on my work as a mental performance coach and step back from the coaching teams, managing teams and podcasts and other work, because sometimes when you spread yourself too thin, you're just not really you're not giving your best in all kind of walks or pillars of your life, and I wanted to do that this year. So, and it's hard sometimes to turn things down or to step away from things, and people say, oh, how could you not do that? You're good at it. But just because you're good at something doesn't mean you have to do it. And mental performance coaching is what I feel like my real passion is. It's the grow I have, work I've been doing for years. I'm always growing in it. I'm always learning. There's lots of different opportunities, but you have to give it the time and water the seeds if that's what you want to do, and that's what I'm doing at the moment.
When you say the line of just if you're good at something doesn't mean you have to do it, resonates with me for a few reasons. But what advice do you give any listeners that are maybe young or it could be of any age that are being told, oh, you should do X or Y, you're good at it, but it's not necessarily their passion? What do you say?
Just, depending on what your commitments are and what your responsibilities are, do what you want to do. Like follow your heart and follow your gut. Like there's always, every time I've stepped through a door to do something, another door has opened. Particularly traditional thinking, going back to school, I'm thinking that audience first of all is, all the classic line that's always in my head is your passport, or you're leaving cert your passport to the rest of your life, blah blah blah. But I don't think it's as simple as that. I think there's a big world out there. It's a hard world at times. It's getting harder and harder to find your way and to find work-life balance and find, I suppose, even when you find your passion, to do it in a sustainable way. That's something myself and my wife have navigated through different walks of life. She's a harpist and she's a writer, and I'm a writer and I'm a coach and a mental performance coach. But finding ways to, I suppose, put pieces of the pie together has got more challenging in the world. But I think when you're doing stuff that you love, you're being true to yourself, you're being authentic, it's easier to find ways or to stay going, I suppose, because there's lots of reasons to quit or to stop. But I would say if you haven't found your passion yet, keep looking for it. And if you have found it, even if sometimes you have to multitask or multi-job, don't let someone knock it out of you or turn you away from it, because it's where, in my experience, it's where the real joy and that deeper sense of satisfaction and purpose comes from in life. And I would just encourage people to stay the course and have the courage to keep going with it.
You mentioned there you moved from New York to Philadelphia. We were chatting a little bit off air or before recording, more than off air, about kind of the rat race that is New York City. I think it resonates with a lot of people, but for people that are in their own rat race, whether they're in New York or in something else, how did you not get caught up in it and stay true to your passion?
I probably did get caught up in it to a degree. Like it's, people say you're a product of your environment, and even though you can do lots of work over the years with self-awareness and your visions and your values, sometimes your environment does just take its toll on you. That can be people you're around, that can be workplaces you're in. There's multiple things that can influence you. And it's hard. Like city life can be hard, where rents are higher and salaries or money in's not always going up in tandem with that, and then you have to work a little more. Like it can be challenging. But I suppose there's just that, my experience, and one of the decision we made as a couple, and as getting ready to start a family, was just wanting, the phrase that comes to mind for me was wanting more space and living at a slower pace. And a couple of years ago, if you had asked us we would leave New York, we both would have said no. Like, we liked it, and I think New York sometimes gets a hard rap by a certain cohort of people who've never been there or even experienced it. Sometimes people have been there and don't like it. That's fine, but everywhere has pros and cons. If I take you down to a town in Cavan, there's good stuff there and there's bad stuff there. If I take you into Dublin or Cork or Galway, it's the same, and New York's the same, and so is Pennsylvania, where I am now. But I think coming back to just the word that always comes back to me is just that authenticity and finding what's right for you. And if you find what's right for you, like, who cares what anyone else thinks or what else? Because some people want to be in New York and love it, and that's great. Like, stay going. Like, that's super. But I feel like for me, as I got a little older, you start, like, I'm just 34 now, so like I'm 35 there this year. Just trying to find a place that has a frequency that I felt comfortable in and that I wanted to be in, that matches me. And coming out of last year, would have been, I'm sure we'll get to it later, there would have been different issues around burnout and stuff that I was experiencing. I was keen just to change my lifestyle a little bit, change my environment, and slow things down a little bit, both externally and internally.
When you mentioned New York, talk us through kind of moving to New York, but what the GAA community is like, and kind of, did it help you find your footing in such a big city?
It's what brought me there. Literally, I was in Cavan one time, and through work and sport and different things, I was a little, maybe burned out, a little fed up. Definitely wasn't fully happy in what I was doing. It wasn't terrible, but I just didn't have that feeling of contentment or of happiness. And there was still lots of stuff going on in my life. I was working with the Cavan senior team and the backroom team. I was leading a fundraising project for Cavan. There's lots of different, there was lots of good stuff going on in my life, but I kind of felt like I wanted to change. And through a contact, someone reached out to me and was like, "Hey, do you want to come to New York for a while? Do you want to take a break?" And I was like, "Yeah." Spoke to a guy, Brendan Dunne was his name. He's involved with the Longford GA Club out here. One of the nicest people I've ever met. Like, so trustworthy and so genuine. And yeah, I lived with him for months when I came out here, and that helped me find my feet. And even at the time with New York, I had a bit of a love-hate relationship with New York at the start. Like, I liked parts of it, but I really didn't like other parts of it. I thought some of it was a bit mad. It was too much for me. And then I suppose met someone else through network, and a guy from Cavan, Connie O'Reilly, and we ended up working together for a project for Cavan GA. We were fundraising, and just during that time, I got to spend more time out there, start finding my feet, being like, oh, I like this. Like, this is a life that could work for me. And just as that goes on, I met my wife, and my now wife, and my life has changed, and I live here now, and I'm fully, I haven't moved to America. I'm living in America, and I've settled in America, and none of that, genuinely, my life has changed so much. I'm happy, and I'm honestly, I wrote the other day, I'm literally part of me is living a life that I dreamed of, and none of that wouldn't have happened without that kind of GA community and that support from people. Because it's when someone says, "Hey, come on over here and we can help you, kind of give you a place to stay for a few weeks or for a few months," it makes it a lot easier than, wait, how much do I have to pay? I need a deposit. Sometimes as an Irish person or as a foreign person, you can't even do that. So that network, that community, and when you're out here, you meet those people. They tell you their stories of how they ended up there, and it's one of the purest forms of community and of connection and of generosity and of they've ever come across. And it's a really sincere thing. And those two people I mentioned in particular, Brendan Donoghue and Connie O'Reilly, have just had a profound impact on my life through their just through their character and their willingness and want to help other people make a move they did. Because when they did it, it was hard too. It was arguably even harder because they were getting on planes and landing at JFK and picking up a payphone to call someone to be like, "Where am I going?" And they figured it out, and there wasn't Google Maps or Apple Maps on their phone. And hearing those stories and stuff. So yeah, they were kind of my core introduction to the GA community over here, and those two people have just I suppose I would say from a sense of gratitude that they had such a profound impact on my life. But the crazy thing is, they're two I know they've helped many people like either have a break, start a new life, and there's loads of those around in New York. Some of them I've never met, some of them I do know of, and it's a really, really, it's one of the coolest, purest positives of the GAA, in my opinion.
You said there you're living the life that you dreamed of. I'm assuming at one point your dream was to play intercounty football for Cavan. So when did that dream change, or did it ever evolve?
Um, that was a dream of mine as a child, and I got to do it. Like, I got to live that dream. I did it for years. There was highs and lows to it, and I suppose even as you say that question, just I'm not sitting over here on my ivory tower being like life is amazing and this is all class. Like, shit's hard sometimes and dealing with all sorts of stuff like everybody else is. So just to clear that up. But yeah, the playing stuff, that was when we moved. Like, I moved as a kid from Dublin to Cavan at maybe 11, and quickly football became like, when you move to Cavan, I always tell people, like, you quickly realize you have the choice of two things as a young man. It was tractors or football, and I liked football. Even at that, I played a lot of soccer growing up. Soccer was my first love. But when we moved to Cavan, like, the GA kind of took over. I was lucky that I was good at it. I was a good goalkeeper and found friends there, found a group there, found belonging there. And like, playing for Cavan quickly became a dream. Like, my family wasn't GA people. Like, so I remember going to Cavan games with one of my friends, Sean. His dad would take us, John, to, going to Clonus, or another friend, Niall. His dad would take us, Paul, to Clonus, to Breffni. Memories of going to see Larry Riley play and seeing James Riley in goals, and these different players that like stick with you, they stick in your memory. And as a kid, you just go like, I wanted to do that. And it was standing in the terrace, feeling the atmosphere, the energy, the crowds, watching them do that. At the time, Cavan weren't always great, to be honest. When I had moved down, like, they were actually, boys don't mind me saying it, we were pretty crap. But just seeing what it was, it excited me, and my teenage years really would have went after it. That was my number one focus, honestly. But I got to do it into my 20s. I got to play in Croke Park multiple times, played an All-Ireland quarter-final against Kerry. I've played like under 21 All-Ireland final in Croke Park. I got to, like, that part of my dream I got to do. But I suppose as I got a little older, probably around 25, 26, I think I just knew that playing wasn't fulfilling me the way it used to. I used to be quite happy to give of myself with that single purpose, because playing takes up a lot. You have to really go after it and sacrifice a lot of other things. And because of what had happened in my life with my mental health, but also like growing as a person, career development, personal development, I started to think bigger, and I wanted bigger, and I was always attracted to like dressing rooms and coaching and bigger picture stuff, the psychology of sport. And I kind of knew that I wanted to focus on that. I focused particularly on the mental health side of it for a couple of years. I've been all over the country, hundreds if not thousands of schools, companies, clubs, doing mental health awareness at the time. And since then, that evolved into the sports psychology, the mental performance, mental skills. And I just found a greater purpose and a greater, deeper satisfaction in that work, where you were trying to help like groups achieve things rather than being the one guy in the goal trying to stop the ball going into the net, if I'm being honest. And that was just changed for me in that kind of mid-20s. And people would have questioned it and challenged it, and I'd still get, how come you stop playing? Or I remember, so heading into my late 20s, early 30s, people were like, why aren't you playing? I was still playing with my club and bits and pieces, and I still contributed, but it just wasn't fulfilling me the way it was. And I just pivoted, and I started coaching then late 20s, early 30s. And kind of honestly, people would always say that to me as well, like, why are you coaching? You're 30 years old. I just liked it more. I liked it more than playing. I just got a better satisfaction. I liked the deeper thinking around it, influencing groups, helping other people. And just, it's a better fit for me, and I got more joy from it. And going back to one of your earlier questions, if you enjoy something more than something else, do that if you can.
The piece I'll probably reference for anyone that hasn't read it is in the Independent, titled "Life as an Intercounty Manager." You wrote it there quite recently, actually, and the other dream you had was being an intercounty manager. And from reading the piece, it maybe didn't fulfill the same, maybe a similar piece to the playing, where you didn't enjoy it, maybe, or you pivoted kind of quickly after doing it.
Yeah, it's something I'm still haven't fully pieced together, but I actually loved it. Like, that's the thing. Like, I loved it. Part of me wishes I was still doing it. But at the end of the day, the GAA is an amateur sport, and if I was just coaching a team and had my personal life outside of that, I think it would have been fine. It would have been hard, definitely. But when you're coaching a team, I was planning a wedding. I was doing a podcast series with my wife. I was doing a podcast series for the GPA. I was trying to run my own business as a mental performance consultant. It was just too much. And like, genuinely, I love coaching so much. There's part of me that sometimes still thinks I wish I could just be a full-time coach and do that, but that's not the world. And certainly in the GA sense, it can be in soccer, and I've coached at soccer and played around with that idea, but it's really just having got to the end of the year, I really burned myself out, just the spread of things. And if anyone's listening, like, they'll be laughing, but like, I was managing New York. I'd agreed to do that, and I was so happy to do it. Like, I coached a club over here to an intermediate and then a senior final. Like, I'd managed that team through that journey, felt fully ready for it. In some ways I was, but in some ways, like, I wasn't. And just the depth of it was just doing too much. I think that answers the question better. Like, it's not that the job didn't fulfill me, because I loved it. There's lots of it I absolutely adored and I miss, but it just wasn't the right fit for me now. I'm a 34-year-old man. Like, I just got married. We're planning on, hoping to buy a house, start a family, and just given the 30 to 40 hours a week to that right now is just something I can't do. Like, and it just would have been selfish and honestly irresponsible of me, both for myself and to my wife and to my family. So it's a hard decision, but it's one I made for the better.
What's the jump then from club to county? What is it? What's the biggest change? From your role perspective, obviously the standards and everything else, but from a manager's role, what's the jump?
Like, managing a club, I managed a club for years. Like, it's pretty easy in my opinion. Like, you're very football focused, especially in New York. You get the lads together, high energy, you plan your session, you can go and you do your session, you talk to lads before, you talk to lads afterwards, but it's all very in balance. It's all very Tuesday, Thursday, like, play your game. The intercounty one was just very different. Like, the sheer number of people involved probably triples. So instead of 20 people in your kind of WhatsApp group, there's 60. And then there's the staffing part of it. And if you don't have the staff, it doesn't work. Like, it's like you haven't a hope. Like, but then you have to manage the staff as well. And you have to find staff and all that kind of stuff. And then you just go into the playing size as well. Like, at times, some stages it's 60 players. Some stages, then you cut it down, you might have 40. So it's just a multiplier. So I would probably just easily multiply by 3, potentially 4. And then there's just like the mental, like, for New York, it's kind of a weird one, because like, you're managing the National League, for example. Like, you've games every week, so it's all fast, but at the end of the week, there's a release valve, there's a high and a low. Like, there's a high or a low. You won, you lost. Oh, review the film, like, review the tape again, watch it again, break it down. Okay, we go again. In New York, it's a kind of a different investment, because you have to really sustain it yourself for long periods. Like, you start training in January, 3 months of training to play in April. If you win, you're out again in 2 weeks' time. And if not, then you're pushing to June. So then you're into another break. So in some ways, you could argue that that's easier to manage, but also in some ways I would actually push back and say it was harder, because there's a lot of motivation. And the players are great. Genuinely, don't get me wrong. Like, they're a very self-motivated group, but you kind of have to, I suppose, you feel like you're pushing the boulder up a hill for longer periods, if that makes sense.
So is there a realistic way of taking that away, that big 3-month kind of waiting period for that one game, and having something where it's, whether it's teams, whether it's funded a bit by somebody or the GEA, and they go over for their training camp to New York, because they're all doing training camps, that's the reality of it. It costs a lot of money. So is there a way to tie it into New York and try get more games for the team?
I'm not sure. There's always a way if someone wants to pay for it. And ultimately that's the issue here is the cost of it. Like, New York's an expensive place for someone from Ireland to come out to us. But then also people will be like, oh, why'd you come to Ireland and stay here for a week or two? Like, players have jobs. Like our staff have jobs. Lots of companies that these guys work in don't even know what GA is. Like, so yeah, they might take a long weekend off. Even when we were going home to play leash, you know, you've lads using up annual leave time, and in societies like New York, the general annual leave is less than it is in Ireland. Like, so it's really challenging. Part of me, the optimist thinks, yeah, definitely, because the GA out there is amazing. Like the group of people I had on that team, both staff and players, were an exceptional group of people in terms of their character, the diversity, their passion, the self-motivation. Like, I literally could not speak highly enough. And what they have to overcome to make it work is a lot, and they do it because they love it. But I don't have a clear answer. I've been in it for a year. I don't have a clear answer, but it's just hard. It's just hard, and it would take, you know, who's going to sign off on a checkbook for 6 figures when, you know, GA doesn't really work like that.
The piece when you said you loved it, and I don't want to question that, I fully understand as well, but from someone looking in that doesn't understand it and doesn't get the buzz of being in there, like the title or the headline of the piece is "Life as an Intercounty Manager, Migraines, Constant Fatigue and a Fuzzy Brain. I became unusually irritable and erratic." And kind of lower down there was a piece about kind of going into, like, you know, your regular naps, coffee and crease, going into a movie theatre in the middle of the day in Manhattan just to try get away from it all. Why did you love it then? If there was so much going on, just give us an insight into that.
Yeah, there's 2 parts of it. Like, there's why did I love it? It's just being a manager in any sport is one of the most rewarding jobs in the world. Like, the sense of satisfaction, of accomplishment, problem solving, relationship building, seeing other people individually go to new levels, seeing groups come together and unite and like gather purpose. Like, that's one of the most fulfilling things, and certainly how I'm wired. Like, seeing, you know, the classic example of, like, there was a young kid last year, Joey Grace, was a goalkeeper. He came in as 3rd choice goalkeeper at the start, like training away, getting better. And I saw something, and we all saw something in him. And you go, I'm going to back him. Like, I'm going to give him his debut. And he goes out and basically he's like our best player in the field against Mayo. And like he ended up being on like the Connacht squad in like the provincial. It just, that's even now, like, as a, like, I don't have to get in goosebumps even just talking about that, because that's what coaching is. Like, it's helping other people, like, and trying to bring people together. And that's, like, I love that. But I suppose on the flip side of it, like, the burnout part of it is something I really, really struggled with. And it's kind of, even it's always on. There's just always stuff coming through, whether it's players, staff, and all trying to do their job. And then even, like, you know, I would regard myself as a very good delegator. Like, I went in kind of very open to who I need around me, what I need them to do, assign responsibilities. But even, you know, the worry of, it still plays on your mind. Like, you still weigh the decisions, you still weigh what's going on and worry about it. I just found it harder and harder to kind of to switch off and to rest. And it just, you know, and this happens because I actually work with coaches. Like, I work with coaches on a one-on-one basis when I'm working with teams as I'm a performance coach. Like, every coach starts the season full of buzz and zest, and yeah, great, like, we're all like, here's our vision, here's our plan, we're really excited for it. And you see it over the course of the season, like, it dips and it dips and it dips, because it's just a hard job. Like, listened to Tim Clancy last week, who just stepped down from Cork City, and he talked about he said he was just exhausted. And like, it's a very demanding job. And then when lines blur as well between passion and between like responsibility, like, it's just a hard thing to manage. And I felt that, like, during the season, I was definitely fighting burnout. And I did a good job. Like, I'm very happy with how I manage a team. I'd be very proud of that. But I suppose it was after the season finished, when my wedding had happened in Ireland. So we ended up playing Laois on the Friday, I got married on the Friday and we played Laois on the Sunday in the one weekend. So there was a lot going on. But really what got to me was when the season finished and I went back to my day-to-day work, working with colleges here at NCAA level. Like, was working in soccer, men's soccer, women's soccer, ice hockey. It really I started that season with my battery low, and by the end of it, I was wiped. That's that heading. For sure, it's out of the piece, but it's not necessarily describing how I was during the GA season, if that makes sense. It would have been what happened afterwards. And it really, really impacted me as a person. I experienced burnout, mental fatigue in a way I never had before. I really, really struggled with it as a person. It affected my work, it affected me, it affected my relationship. And I think, and that's what I say when I said that to you earlier, if just it was the GA season and I went back and my life was, I don't know, if I was a carpenter or as an accountant or whatever, and I went back into my regular job, probably would have been fine. I definitely would have been like, I think I would have been like, okay, I'm going to definitely do the New York job again. But my day-to-day work is too close to it. Like it overlaps too much. And it just didn't work. And when I work with teams, when I work with athletes, coaches, I talk a lot about preparing, performing, and reflecting. And for me not to reflect the way I did and draw the lessons would have been entirely hypocritical. For me to ignore what happened to me would have been, like, as I think I said the word irresponsible earlier, like it just would have been, I couldn't let it happen. And it still was really hard. But when I reflected on that, that's the thing. Those two big life events, big sports events, it didn't work for me, and I scrambled the circuit. That's the easiest way I can say it.
You mentioned it there, the personal lessons. What did you learn about yourself, really?
Good stuff and bad stuff. Like, I feel comfortable to say I learned that like I was good at it. I thought I'd be good at it going in, and I was, and it's like that's reassuring and that's nice, and you go, yeah, okay, I'll take that from it. But then you just, in terms of the real lessons are what didn't work, to be honest. Like the real lessons are self-care. The real lessons are self-compassion. Like I think when you're coaching a team, and this happens, you can read books and articles all the time. As a coach, you become so engrossed in empowering others to be better and empowering others, problem solving and helping, you push your stuff to the side and down. And I think the two words that come to mind to answer that question with regards to lessons would be self-care and self-compassion. And it was a funny one for me because I've done a lot of work in those areas in my life. Like my journey with mental health started as a 21-year-old when I published that article, when I published the article in the Sunday Independent as a player with my mental health experience. Like I've been on a long journey of mental health, of self-care, of self-awareness. And I would have felt that was a real strong point to me, but seeing me fall into the same traps maybe as other people, it was humbling. And that's that lesson in terms of, yeah, like you never know, like, I mean, not that I did, but you don't know all the answers. And I think as well as the classic saying, like, you don't know, like you got to walk a mile in their shoes. I could have spent my whole life working with coaches and with teams being like, yeah, I get what you're going through, but it wouldn't really, because I didn't do it. And that was when I took the New York job. It was, I've said this publicly, and I don't mind saying it. Part of it was selfish. Part of it was like, I want to do that. I want to feel the burden of it. I want to feel the weight of managing a team. And the other part was entirely unselfish. I wanted to help this group of players who I knew, who I was familiar with, go to the next level in their preparation, their performance. And I think we did that too. We may not have got the result, but I say the same piece like I described, like seeing how that team played and performed in Ireland, being in front against Laois in the Tailteann Cup, who've come through the O'Byrne Cup, the National League, have played in Leinster, have played their 3 Tailteann Cup group games, and we're rocking in having played Mayo. Like literally at the start of the year, none of us, half them didn't even know each other, and we were winning with like 15 minutes to go, I think it was. And just the kind of wheels came off the wagon there, and that kind of little bit of inexperience and lack of kind of game reps got us. And I can take that on the chin, because when you see the way they performed, the way they played for each other, the way they competed for each other, the aggression, the commitment, like stand on the sideline, it's one of the greatest feelings. Like it's such an amazing feeling in the sporting perspective. And I said it was a weird week for me because I got married on the Friday. I had travelled separately to the team. I met the team on the day of the game, seeing how my staff stepped up, not coming out of their shell, but just stepping up, players stepping up. And that's another really good lesson you take when you're managing a team or coaching a team. You think you have to be all over everything. But sometimes you don't. Like sometimes if you've got good people around you, you can just take a step back. And I'd be so proud of of that group. And then for me, it was such a nice feeling when I made the difficult decision to step away that the entire management team stayed in place. One of the coach, Ronan, stepped up. He became the manager, and they went again. And you talk about leadership. That to me is an incredibly deep sense of satisfaction, because that is, you know, okay, I'm gone, but the show goes on, and they're going on together, and that gives me a lot of satisfaction and pride.
When you mentioned the word, you said selfish there. I don't necessarily think that's a negative thing, and I think any intercounty manager in the country, whether it's ladies football, camogie, hurling, football, they all want to be an intercounty manager. So I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. Like Jim Gavin wanted to manage Dublin. He didn't want to do it. He wouldn't have done it. So when people talk about the selfish piece, I can see why people would take it in a negative kind of piece as well as the positives. In terms of, you mentioned that before, you wanted to feel the responsibility. So how has that changed your professional role and your approach with your clients now that you've experienced the management role with New York?
Yeah, I'll come to that. I suppose what I would just say back to Orla is like the selfish piece, because I get what you're saying, and I totally I don't disagree with it. But also, I would say like it does become selfish if you know this is having a negative impact on your personal life, on yourself as an individual. Like if it's on your family or friends around you, like, and if you want to pursue it, like, because I've done that as a player, definitely at that point in my life, I was happy to do it. At this point, I wasn't. Like, I just got married. That's not how I wanted to spend the first year, like the next year of my marriage. Like, so there is I think maybe as you get older, kind of for me, you probably just widen that up, widen that out a little bit. And again, for me, it's like because any elite sport, and I've worked in multiple sports, like there's a selfish aspect to all of it. Yeah, I don't think you could be successful without parts of it. But like for me, like I also just wanted to pivot, and I wanted to focus on my work and the next chapter of my life. And I suppose to answer your question, like the lessons that you take from it are just so many. Like I think,
like, has it changed the way you would approach with a client, since then?
definitely.
Okay,
Definitely.
in what way?
Definitely self-care, and self-care shoots up the list 100%. Like I feel like I used to have it in there and it would be a thing. And it's funny, there's a coach a few years ago I worked with, I'm not going to name him, but like when we were talking through the different facets of my program, and Joe, we were talking about leadership and mental toughness and resilience and all just the different components we were doing. And when it got to the well-being, self-care, he said he didn't want to do it. He was like, I want to focus on the other things. And I kind of was like, okay. I let it go the first day and kind of loop back to it once or twice, tried to loop back to it, and he kept pushing away. He was like, no, focus on my team, focus on my players, I want to get the best out of them. That's all I care about now. You can help me do that. That's what I want you here for. Okay. But as the year went on, like, you notice a difference in him. You notice a shift, and you can see his energy starting to go down, and we ended up having the conversation. We got into it. I eventually kind of popped the cork off and we got into it, and we did some work around self-care and family time and prioritizing that time. And I suppose coaching is very much an energy out. A lot of the time it's an energy out experience. You've got to talk to people, you've got to stand up in front of a group, plan a set. There's a lot of just, all these things are energy out. And then we say, okay, but what are you doing to put energy back in? And that's probably just that concept, that idea I bring very much to the fore earlier in the relationship. And it's like, no, like this is part of my duty to you. Like, we've got to figure out how you're going to do that. Because right now it doesn't feel like a problem, because the season's just starting and you're buzzing because you're in pre-season and the team is training. But I need you to trust me that this is something that we need to do now. And we also need to have early warning systems that if you feel that's starting to slide, that you can come and talk to me and we can piece it together and make proactive steps. Because as a coach, as a leader, if you're on 20%, 10%, you can't do yourself justice. Like, and you're also starting, like, whether you think you're persevering, and you can persevere, and lots of coaches do, and I've done it, but if you're over reliant on resilience, I believe not that I believe, like, I think it's proven, like, if you're over reliant on resilience, it has a diminishing impact on performance eventually. There's certain times where, yes, you have to grind the teeth and persevere and keep going, and that's absolutely helpful for performance. But if you're over reliant on that, if your energy keeps dropping, your performance will eventually drop too. Like, it's just inevitable.
That's really interesting. Yeah.
That's
no, go for it.
I was just saying, that's just something I would feel, because I've done it. I would feel much stronger about pushing back. And also I'm able to say it because I've felt it, I've done it. I literally made the mistake. Like I literally, like, you know, getting the subway up to the train and be like, "Oh, I'll just close my eyes here, I'll have a quick rest," or getting off the subway and going and grabbing a coffee and a donut, and then you're going in like telling the lads watch what you're eating, like because you're taking shortcuts. And again, that's totally fine, it's normal. But when those things become the norm, that I like, it just has a diminishing impact on performance. There's no doubt about it from a leadership perspective.
Give us some insight into the self-care piece. I know Stephen Maxwell did a bit of research on it in University of Limerick. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but for any coaches listening, what are your advice on self-care? And I love that energy in, energy out is coaching, and energy in is sustaining coaching is kind of what I've written down here.
Yeah, like you have to self-care, and like that's okay. So self-care, I know I've done this, I've sat in rooms and I can almost see someone roll their eyes when I say the word self-care. So you can find better language, like energy in works for me. Like I would call that, at this point I call it sustainable performance. So okay, I know you're really good, that's why you're here, but how can we keep you like well? How can we keep you able to perform at your best? And a lot of the time, like I could say, look, with college athletes and teams, that can go into, I suppose, the athletic identity piece, and remind them, hey, like you're in college, but like you're here as like you're a student and an athlete. You're not just an athlete. Like, so you have to go to classes, you have to do your homework, you have to go to the library, you have to do stuff that like, I suppose answering your question is it's doing things that are away from the athletic piece of your life. Like it can take over, particularly like being a manager and a coach and an athlete. Like it can become an all-consuming black hole if you let it. And having time away from sport, for work, for life, for yourself. And just, we're not talking, when I talk about this stuff, people want to know like, oh, is there a super or secret app or a piece of technology? No, this is just like, this is back to basics a little bit. And like, are you getting time out by yourself? Yeah, I go for a walk, listen to a podcast. What do you listen to? Most times, and including myself, it could be, oh, just listen to a podcast about sport of some sort. So now I'm listening to a podcast and I listen to that sport and they say something that makes me think about my team and my brain's gone off. And even though I'm out for a walk, my thoughts for the whole walk have been about the team that I'm coaching later that night. So it's helping, but it's not, there's deeper rest reset that's available. And, you know, music is helpful, is more helpful if you're out for a walk, if you can find that space to relax. And you know, I'm saying it from that perspective. Like I always say with coaches, like it's finding what works for you. So for me, I used to go to the cinema during the day, because the phone was in the pocket, it was in a dark room, it was helpful and conducive. It kind of put me into that like insular feeling of, okay, I'm away from the world. You got to shut off now. You got to just look at the screen and relax. But there's lots of different things that can work for people. You know, I know a different coach I worked with made a commitment that when he was with his family, when he got home in the evening, the phone went into the drawer. And he would check it often, but in general, the phone was in the drawer, because you're not sitting on a mat playing with your kid and then a player texts you and you feel like you have to text that back straight away, or you're not sitting at the dinner table and your sister coach reads you and you have to get back straight away. And I done different things like that too that did help. Like it wasn't like there's a lot of different things you can do to I suppose I found the difference ultimately, I think, and this is a key difference to share, is there's a difference between fighting burnout and kind of trying to like keep going versus just recovering from burnout. And I went so far down the path that I had to really recover. Like I had to just fully, and the stuff that works for you when you're recovering is very different to what you would do if you're fighting it. Because ultimately when you're recovering, it's rest. And like it's you find, okay, I need to rest, the doctors told me I need to rest, therapists told me I need to rest, and you're sitting there and you think you're resting, but your brain's not resting. And that like wiring in your brain has become so used and accustomed to moving so fast and problem solving, and that's what I'm saying in my job as a mental performance coach. That's kind of what I do a lot of the time. Like I'm a problem solver, I'm a support for coaches, I'm a support for players. So you're high on, and then I found doing that at the same time as managing was burning the candle at both ends. That's when I say the combination didn't work. One of the reasons why. Yeah, so I know I took a long way around there, but like really it's just finding what works for you. And like but you have to really, like it's all well and good saying it, but then you have to do it. And I think that self-awareness piece of, I say energy out. So, okay, how can we practically track that? Okay, how about we set up a Google form? Like when I was the New York manager, every session we would ask the players post-session to fill out, just literally would take 30 seconds, but just kind of intensity session, key learnings, whatever. And the next day we would do a recovery form, like, okay, how are you feeling today out of 10, blah, blah, blah. So I was doing that for the players, and this job about learning, I wasn't doing that for me. So now, in terms of this year, my work, one of the things I've just started to do is early warning system. I have a little Google form for myself. What's my energy out of 10? What's my mood out of 10? What's my brain power out of 10? What's on my mind? And just keeping track of that. So in a month's time, I can look back at the end of the month and go, cool, energy and average was, 7 out of 10, 6.5 out of 10. There was a couple of low days, got bounced back from that. And that's kind of, how can you build your own self-awareness about how you're feeling? And then how can you build better resilience, self-compassion, that when those numbers are dipping down, that you can bring them back up.
I love that. I've written that down, that form that you've done, the early warning system. I'm definitely going to rob that from you.
You're allowed.
I made a point on a podcast recently, and I would love to expand on it at some point and do a proper big thing on it. But we have a Gaelic Players Association. We have strength and conditioning now. We have all of these associations. I think Pat Gilroy and Joe Brawley's podcast made up that he set up the Waterboy Association as a joke. But I see a gap for a managers association, and that's not to everyone say, well, they don't talk to each other. There's plenty of managers who are friends and will give each other, calls and stuff like that. Is there scope in the GEA to have a managers association? And why I say that is, I look at intercounty teams, and it didn't necessarily happen with you with New York, which is great to hear, but I hate when I hear of a manager comes in, particularly I find in ladies, it's more than men. Manager comes in, he appoints strength and conditioning, he or she will appoint everything around her, and as soon as Alan leaves, everything's gone and we start again. Like, to me, we talk about GA being professional. That's not professional. So do you see a scope where that sort of learnings that you had from, the EWS, the self-care stuff, everything being looked after, like, is there scope for that in the GA?
There's a couple of things there that come to mind just as I listen to Orla, and it's, okay, yes, there's definitely a scope. For example, when I took the job and I was a couple of months into it, the wife of an intercounty manager who I would know had texted me saying, why don't you set up a managers association? So yes, and I've thought about it. And then the second thing I do want to say is there's absolutely is a gap, but I think it's important to say the Gaelic Players Association filled that gap a lot of the time. People don't know about it, it's not advertised, but there's different times where managers have needed help and support, and they do it. It's not part of the remit, they don't have to. Of course, sometimes it's former players, so there's a natural kind of crossover there. But in general, day to day, the GPA are focused on players, not on managers, as is literally their name. It's a problem, I would say, Ireland is behind the curve. I just saw, recently as Stephen Bradley spoke about it, I think it was, and I think it was Stephen Bradley just had talked about setting up a league managers association. There isn't one in the soccer league. And ultimately this all comes back to A, resources, and B, prioritization of resources. And it's not there in Ireland. Like in England, there is a league managers association dedicated to soccer managers. I know that. But it's not there in Ireland. And the second thing that comes to mind is, you said there, the example you gave of particularly in ladies Gaelic football and camogie, because I know this, for example, I've seen it up close, like when you said manager comes in, here's my backroom team, okay, manager, you all go. So a lot of the progressive counties in Ireland don't do that anymore. Like, they've made steps, they make commitments, particularly in strength and conditioning. You're on salary, you're a staff member. I'm pretty sure, yeah, you could, if you went back through backroom teams, like I think, say when Jim Gavin switched to Desi Farrell, like I think a good chunk of them stayed. Like I think, but I still think it's the minority of counties that are doing it that way.
I think in the men's game, I think it's minority in the men's, but the ladies, it's still very, like I
would say
senior teams.
I'd say it's pretty non-existent.
Yeah,
I'd say it's pretty non-existent.
Yeah.
And the other point that I have, like, I probably say, half me doesn't even want to say it because I don't know how well it'll go down, is in Ireland we talk a lot about, the GA, like, it basically is professional, but it's not. And we tell ourselves it is. And I've worn every hat in it. I've been a player, I've been a goalkeeping coach, I've been a selector, I've been a coach, I've been a manager, I've worked for Croke Park in the communications department, I've worked for the Gaelic Players Association as a player engagement coach. I've consulted on like loads of different things. I've fundraised in the GA professionally. I've worn more hats than a lot of people. And ultimately, there's this weird thing in the GA, and it's because in some ways it's a good thing, in some ways it complicates it, is that we tell ourselves it's basically professional, but it's not. And that's why when it comes to like even just for example, because the reason I had this conversation recently with someone, and they're actually arguing over how poor the GA are promotion and marketing. That's how the conversation came up. And it's easy. My first response was like, yeah, it's brutal. Like it's not good enough. And bear in mind, like I corrected myself really quickly because I worked for the GA. Like I worked in the communications department for years. And at the end of the day, I don't know how many is there. I think there's 5 in the communications department, 5 people. And in the marketing department, it's probably similar. So, okay, the GA needs to do a better job of marketing. So there's 10 people, great. And they say, well, look what the NFL do, look what the NBA do, look what the Premier League does. But here's the difference. All of those clubs have professional people, the same number of people doing that thing just for their club. The GA doesn't. You go to, okay, I go to Cavan. There's a full-time, not CEO, but it's full-time, whatever the title is, and they use it. Yeah, there's a full-time staff member, some games promotion. But at the end of the day, the PRO is a volunteer. Like every county is a volunteer PRO, pretty much a voluntary secretary. So in what world would we expect the same? And it's really difficult. It's something I'm still trying to process because as a player, yeah, GA basically is professional, but it's not. And the players, the commitment they give, and the managers and what they give is absolutely in tandem, absolutely stands up to what we know that, but the support mechanisms around it don't.
100%. I've said this before, and it's not a slight against players or management or coaches. On the pitch, I think we're as professional as we can get, but off of it, we are stratospheres behind where we could be. And I'm really glad you made the point, and I've been critical of the promotion of GEA. More of my point is, and I agree, there's only 5 people, let's say, in both, for example. I don't know, you'd know better than me. But then I find it hard when I see pages online that if we're not professional, and I'm very conscious there's a branding piece and there's a legal piece, but also when they take stuff down from other people, like that kind of bothers me because that's growing the game. So there's a bit of a catch-22.
I think there's a catch-22 with many things in the GA. And some of the things that make it brilliant and I don't want it, because genuinely, like, the GA has had an amazing impact on my life, but at times it hasn't. Like at times it's had a negative impact on my life, and some of that's personal, yeah, for sure. But I think if we as an organization tell ourselves, or a society in Ireland, we tell ourselves, oh, it's professional, it's professional, everything but name. But then that doesn't work, like, because it's not supported to be professional. Like, being a professional game takes a different level of support mechanisms, both for people, but also, like, you go into the different components of it. And then if we don't have that, then it's not fair to have the expectations that we would place on other things. That's my opinion. That's something I've thought about recently, and I'm still thinking about and processing. I'm not sitting here saying I have all this figured out, but I do feel like I think there's lots of GA players, there's lots of different people. And honestly, it's not just it's volunteers as well. Like, the burnout issue in volunteerism is also very high because we're asking them to do a lot. And county boards, yeah, I could sit here and be like, that county board was terrible, or this one wasn't very good, but they're just volunteers, like. So, like, yeah, everyone's trying their best, like, trying their best, like, and like, what are you gonna do? Like, it's the GA. It's like, it doesn't make sense. Like, I live in America, obviously. Like, you try and start telling people about it, they're just looking at you and like, what are you talking about? Like, none of this makes sense. And it's like, yeah, it kind of doesn't. Like, yeah, there's 4 conferences, like, there's 6 in that one, 12 in that one, 8 in that one, 6 in this. Like, they're like, what are you talking about? Like, none of it makes sense. But that's its uniqueness. There's lots of it is brilliant. Like, there's lots of stuff in the GA that other places and teams and organizations would give their left arm for. But there's lots of it that's complex. And that's, hey, you either want to be in it or you don't. And if you do, great. And if you don't,
Yeah,
don't.
and if you're right, and you say it to people that are outside it, like even I'd say if you said to someone, let's say for example a commercial person in the NFL, and they would be like, they'd be like, why are you setting up the conferences that way? You know, would it make sense to do this or that or whatever? But it's tradition, and that's the beauty of the complexity that is the GAA. I do want to ask, you mentioned there you've worn every hat within the GAA, so you'd give an interesting perspective of it. What did you implement, or what would you implement as a manager that you didn't necessarily have as a player, or something that you spotted that a player would have, like not just your playing career, but something that a player would need that you think we don't fulfill in the GAA?
Yeah, to me, it's like, hey, someone's going to be like, yeah, of course you'd say that. But to me, like, every team, like, as a playing group, every team should have, like, a mental performance coach that can cover performance, well-being, and be there. Not, some teams are still, like, because they just budget. Like, it's like, yeah, someone might come in once a month, someone might be there all the time. There's a complete disparity in that service provision for players. To say it's, again, this is it's not just in GA, because it's also the same in, I know, same in League of Ireland. Like, budget's not there. Literally talked to a manager one time and he was like, yeah, I could have you in or I can sign a striker. I'm sorry, but I wish I could have you in, but I'm signing a striker. Like, and yeah, of course, like, if I was the manager, I would do the same thing, maybe. So yeah, like, and that's where, where that, how that's funded, or it's all left to its own discretion. But there's that, and then for me, like, I'm just trying to think that there was another one that's just gone off the top of my head in terms of the GA, but now it's gone. But that would be it. Like, I just think I'd go back to, and also, sorry, I know what the other one is, but like, the other one, just from a player perspective, is, it's the example you gave, but just the strength and conditioning should be contracted centrally, done through, whether it's even taken out of the counties or whatever. I'm not getting down the democracy route, but everyone's all just doing it in different ways. There's not a consistency. There's not a level playing field there. And I understand the reasons why often, but a smaller county whose revenue is maybe a quarter or a third or a fifth of a different county maybe can't afford to pay someone 50 grand a year, 100 grand a year to be the head of strength and conditioning, and they can pay 25 grand a year for a freelancer, and they don't want the legal responsibilities. But if we're serious about, and that's what I'm saying. So if it's a professional organization, then it's kill or be killed. But if it's an amateur organization and it's then it should be, how do we make it more even? And there's just, I always just feel there's a lack of clarity down there.
Yeah, that's a really, really valid point around even the whole monitoring player load and monitoring players, taking that out of the county's hands. Like, I think I interviewed Luke Keeney, retired at 24 from playing for Donegal, and had double hip replacements, has multiple surgeries, and now he's back cycling, thank God. But like, he can't play football anymore, and that's from and taking it out of the hands, and that's not necessarily just because of Donegal. That was other factors as well. So it's like, who was looking after the player? Like, a player I spoke to recently said, dual player, and she said, like, I have to manage it myself, and it's like, that shouldn't be on the player. But look, because we're not professional, so what do you do then? I do want to ask, the other thing, aside from injury, and for example with Luke, what's the biggest barrier to players reaching their potential from what you've seen?
There's the individual part, so that can be the mental skills, that can be mindset, that can definitely be a barrier. And when I work with teams, when I work with coaches, I work with athletes, focus on three things in particular. Would focus on resilience, would focus on connection, and focus on confidence, and trying to drill those down, build those foundations deeper, both individually, but also, and sometimes with mental skills and mental performance work right now, sometimes people feel like, okay, well, that's just, you go, and it's in the GA world as well, or not just GA world, but like, okay, we have that person here now, so when something's wrong with Orla or when something's wrong with Alan, we'll send him and they'll have a chat and they'll bounce back, and that's fine, like, that's helpful and it works. But then also there's just a piece around, and it's kind of the part of the world of mental performance I'm drawn to, is the group. Is, okay, how can the group become more resilient? How can the group become more confident? How can the group become more connected? And we can absolutely do that individual piece by piece. but also, you know, I feel like there's the classic, like the push pull. So, but what if we do both together and it just goes straight up? And I do stuff in a way where I like to get players to talk to each other and to problem solve a lot. And sometimes when I go into a group, they think they're going to be listening to me for an hour, but I'm like splitting them up into groups and getting them talking to each other and presenting stuff back to me, and I'm taking away the learnings. And that's how it, that's my style and how I do it. And like, yeah, that's part of the reason. Or I mean, it's part of the work that I love doing. Sorry, I got off on a tangent there.
It's okay.
Remind me what the full question was.
The biggest barrier to players reaching their potential.
Yeah, sorry. And then honestly, if they just, it's, people don't like hearing it, but like the quality of coaching, like coaching is, some people go through their life and might never have had a good coach. And if you're ever interviewing someone and you ask like how many good coaches have you had, it's pretty small. Like I said, I've played in multiple teams all over the world, in different clubs, and the number's pretty small. Like, and then obviously the flip side of it, because it's nearly swore, but it's really hard. It's really, really hard, and that's like when it comes to, I think, with my Irish hat on, it's just like the resources and the quality of coaching. And like you're in some counties where just look at the draw, who's in charge of the under 16 development squad? I don't know. Where do we get them from? I don't know. Like, whereas like even over here, like teams that I work with, like you can see that when, like, say at college level, like it could like if the new coach comes in and they want to kind of build out a program and they add a few extra layers of stuff around the program that maybe wasn't there before because the previous coach might have been a more traditional, no shade, like, but just old school kind of coach. And then they go, okay, well, here's some mental performance, here's our strength and conditioning, here's our extra couple of bits. And now as a group, we're going to try and figure this out together. And young people, particularly young players, their engagement goes through the roof. Like, and it brings problems. You have to problem solve a lot more because like you're actually giving them more responsibility, which means there's going to be frustration and they fail at times. But okay, can we learn from that? Can we piece that back together? Let's go again. And if we do that, if we prepare, perform, reflect over and over again, how many times can we get through that triangle during the course of the season? When the playoffs come, when the finals come, we're going to be better rather than, you know, okay, we started pre-season, we trained our arse off, let's just tear into the season now and give it a lash and we'll see how we end up. And then it's so yeah, I think there's the individual part, the kind of mental side of it, which is still very under-resourced, and then there's the quality of coaching. And I say that from perspective, not necessarily having to dig at coaches, because like coaches do the Lord's work. Like literally, it's half, like 99% of coaches, it's like you're doing it for the love, put it that way. And that it's just, yeah, how we just kind of, it's like not necessarily the quality of coaching, but how do we make coaches better? I think that's because the whether they're volunteers or paid, there's a base level of coaching. How do we make them better? And I would say that coach development is still behind in that regard as well. I'm talking from a big picture scale. Like you're saying, if that question is for a young player or whatever, but you're kind of as a young lad, like you're kind of a certain degree of luck whether you get a good coach or not. Like, is there a good teacher? Is there a teacher in the school that's a good coach or a bad coach? Is there a, and yeah, I know people will say, and I don't get me wrong, because I agree with this, like, oh, the good people or the cream will always rise to the top. Yeah, for sure. But how many are we leaving behind? Like, how many are we not helping get to the top that need just one bit of help or two bits of help? Heck, someone might need 3 bits of help. But how many, like, in terms of that pyramid system, how many are we losing along the way that could potentially have got there if the systems around them were better?
I'll give you an interesting insight. I went to listen to Jim Gavan in Belfast, and I said, what would you do differently, or kind of regret? Don't think it was regret. And he said, I didn't get the most out of the Eric Lowndes, the Emmett O'Keneela, the ones that didn't make it. I thought that was interesting. Like, of all the things that he did.
Yeah, that's like, there's always stuff going on with people. Like, it's not like and it's particularly, look, GA is predominantly what we've been talking about, but like there's just so much going on outside of it, like work, life, like we're professionals, and at college level here it's a little different because kind of the work pillar's not there, so there's actually, like, it's a different challenge, but also that brings a different pressure, because now someone's like, hey, well, I'm here because I'm on scholarship, so if I don't I could lose my scholarship, or I'm here because I get paid. So, but if these could just transfer me whenever they want, like these could just cut me whenever, that's a different pressure that people have to deal with. And then how do you manage that pressure? How do you get back to expressing yourself and focusing on the joy and playing looser rather than tighter and all that stuff? And like, to me, like I would just repeat, like the resilience piece you say to a player or to most coaches, like, resilience, what is it? They'll have a phrase, but how do you build it? I don't think you get a deep answer a lot of the time. And that's fine, but like, just that's saying in terms of where the coaching could go to, how we can develop and empower people, but also how we just resource. And actually, this, having done both, a lot of time the responsibility or the pressure is put on the coach, but actually how can we just actually, instead of asking the coach to do more, how can we give them support to make it easier for them? And I would say, like, whenever I sit down with a coach here at college level or professional level, like, I try and express them that my job is to make your life easier, not harder. I'm here to ease your workload, not add to it. And of course, there's going to be times where I need to sit down with you. Of course, we're going to have a weekly meeting, but in general, that time you put in with me pays off, because I'm doing stuff that's going to not even find its way to you. And you can worry about the team at the weekend, the team you're going to pick, the tactics you're going to pick. And that's it. I think coaches, we keep adding stuff to their plate, and it's how we actually support them. And I'm talking that's for college and pro level, because like you're talking about professional resources around people, strength and conditioning, mental performance, nutrition, that kind of stuff, which just costs money. That's just the reality of it.
The piece that resonated with me as well with your story was around the Cavan, when your playing days, and you were kind of said what should have been a career highlight wasn't. So what do you say to a kid or a player? They probably they won't be listening, but someone that knows them that is now going up to their career highlight, whether that's senior club, county panel, and it's not what they wanted, or not what they wanted, it's not what they expected it to be. What advice do you give them?
I think, like, as you get older, it's just that, like, sport is sport and life is life. And sport is important. It's been a huge part of my life. And at different times of my life, I've let it be all consuming. And if sport was going well, I felt good about myself. But I think it's learning to put sport in perspective, to get it back in its box, and that sport is I'm just talking from my experience, it's part of me, and I think it always will be, but it doesn't define me or doesn't define how I am as a husband or as a friend. And like, when you put so much into something, it is like, you have to put, you don't get to achieve big things, whether that's in sport or business or whatever, like, without a lot of effort and energy. But also, if you've done it and you feel like it didn't light you up in a way, like, okay, ask yourself why, think about it, what was going on, was there a lack of connection, what was affecting, like, the joy part of it. But also, not to be afraid to be like, okay, well, I did that for years, I really liked it, maybe I want to do something else. Because, like, if you're a professional, it's different, because that's your bread and butter, that's how you provide for your family, and that's their job, so there's different complications to that. But if you're an amateur athlete, it's not fulfilling you, go try something else, take a break, go play something else, like, whatever. Like, again, I go back to what I said earlier, just because you're good at something doesn't mean you have to do it. Like, if you really want to do it, then okay, sit down with someone and break down, how am I going to get back to that, or how am I going to figure this out, because I really want to see part of my life. But sometimes, and hey, I've met with different athletes and players, and they say, I think I'm going to step away. And okay, why? What are you thinking about? What's going on there? And they explain it to you, and you say, yeah, on you go. Like, you'll loop back to it maybe if you want, but also for now, you need to express yourself, and in terms of who you are as a person and what you want to do, experience new things. Like, sometimes, like, a chapter closes and it takes courage to start the new chapter rather than trying to run it back or reliving the same one. And it's hard to do that, like, because I think in society as well, if you're good at something, people just, you get that label on you, people refer to you as that thing, that's all they kind of want to talk to you about, and people struggle to understand why you'd want to do something different. But at the end of the day, you're the only person that knows yourself, you're the only person that knows whether you're happy or not, and if you are, great, keep doing that, and if you're not, talk to someone about it, because some of it can be fixable. Some of it actually you realize, oh, I didn't realize that's what it was. Maybe it's a lack of connection with teammates. Maybe it's a lack of connection with coaches. Maybe it's I'm not doing enough outside of sport in terms of like enjoying my downtime. Maybe it's not, oh, if I had a partner or a friend group to have, like, so there's lots of stuff that's fixable, but also there's sometimes it's just not, and it's like, yeah, it's okay just to like.
And I think we jump to, if you're good at something, you must love it. You must really like that. Well, actually, there's something else that I prefer. Whether that can be anything. That's, yeah, really valid point. My favourite question for every guest: what separates the best from the rest?
I don't have a clean answer for you, because I think from my experience, um, the high performance puzzle is different all the time, different sports, different competitions. But what I've found as I've got older, and this is just my experience, and probably going back to my own playing days, I always found it was better when the group was connected, um, like when there was joy got from what you were doing. There's lots of teams who win, by the way, with very little joy and pride themselves on hardship and perseverance, and that's totally fine if that's what you're into. For me, teams built on joy and connection, I think, are the teams that not only will win, but they'll stay together, both in terms of the seasons afterwards, but also long after as well. And that's something for me that um, that's the bit I love about sport, is those relationships and the experiences you get and the lessons you learn.
What did you learn from the Player's Voice series with the GPA? Anything that stood out there that you didn't expect to learn?
No, I just think, like, similar to what you're doing when you do your podcast, like talking to different people from different backgrounds is so interesting. You'd always come away from a conversation being like, oh, I never thought about that before, or I never saw it like that before, or maybe I thought this, but actually they thought that. And just how much we can learn by just sharing experiences. Bear in mind, I know I've been talking to you for an hour there. People listening could be like, hey, he's full of shite. I don't agree with that. I don't like that. Maybe they will take something from it. And that's the thing, it's just sharing ideas and learnings. And particularly go back to high performance sport, like that's where the real magic happens, like that collaboration of, oh wait, if I combine me and you and like actually we do that together, that would work. And I think, sorry, just going back, it just popped into my head, but the best and the rest, what just came to mind is, because it's something I'd really stand by, is just the reflection piece. We live in a world that's so busy all the time. What are you going to do? Say you're going to do it, go and do it. Cool, good for you, on to the next thing. Now, like, what did you do? How did you do it? If you're going to do it again, how did you do it better? If you did it really well, what worked? That reflection piece. And the good teams do that a lot. The good teams are a lot better at that in terms of conversations, video analysis, individual reflection, reflecting on what's worked, what hasn't, but then using it to drive the next round of preparation. I think a lot of the time we just bing bong boom, and hopefully, as always next year, certainly we come back next year and do the exact same thing. We mill into preseason and we absolutely run each other into the ground, but we really learn from it. And so that would be an answer to your first question.
In terms of learning, best book or podcast or anything you'd recommend for anyone listening?
Yeah, for sure. What am I? I'm just trying to. Whenever I get asked these questions, I kind of just go, what I do. I just finished a book recently from like a coaching perspective, was The Why Is Everything, which I really liked. It was just tracking multiple NFL coaches and the kind of coaching trees and what they learned and how it's worked for some and didn't for others. That's a really good one. The other book that comes to mind that I always really liked is, it's here under the laptop. I'm cheating. Both of these books are under the laptop here as I'm talking to you. But Sacred Hoops by Phil Jackson. Quite a spiritual man. The Red Bulls coach, or not the Red Bulls, sorry, the Chicago Bulls back in the day. And Jordan, Scottie Pippen, all these incredible athletes. Yes, definitely. But he was big into the connection piece. He was big into the human side of it. Connecting with people, and of course as players, and you poke people and you do different things, but really my work, and whether it's been a head coach or a mental performance coach, the first thing a person cares about is like, does this person care about me? Do they give a shit? Like, if I have something, can I talk to them about it? And yeah, like as a head coach, it changes when you're the head coach versus, because when you're the mental performance coach, you're kind of always there to support and to find solutions. When you're the head coach, it can be a little different times, because you have to make tough decisions that's for the better of the group. And unfortunately, when you pick a team, when you pick a squad, people are pissed off. Like, that's just the nature of it. But how you can get people to respect that and respond to that, And ultimately, you do. In my opinion, you do that by having good relationships, the coach relationship, your authenticity, and I go back to that connection piece. That's something I just think is really important. And a lot of the different books with coaches, that's what I'm drawn to. There's people who go the Bill Belichick route, and that's fine, and you take nuggets from that, or there's Roy Keane, Alex Ferguson. There's all these different people, but I feel like you can take bits from everyone, but ultimately it comes down to like, who are you, and are you being genuine? Because if you're not being genuine, players sniff it from a mile away. Like, you haven't a chance. Like, you've no shot. Like, you're better off getting things wrong and being yourself at times than trying to BS your way through it. Like, and just if you make like times like, hey, I got that wrong, I effed up. Like, and players respect that, I find.
What questions do you ask then when reflecting with players or coaches at the end of a season? Is there like a form that you'd use?
Not necessarily a form. Like, for the most part, a simple exercise I would use a lot is just a 3-2-1. So 3 things we did well that we'd want to do again, 2 things we need to do better, and then the 1 would be 1 thing you change if you go back in time. And you split them into 4 or 5 groups there, so you kind of get, say it's 5 groups of 8, so you kind of get a spread, and you'll see the recurring themes that come up. But then you get the kind of nuance of different groups, because someone else in one group might have something that they really feel passionate about, and you piece it together, you get them all to share it, and you take away the page, and you give it to the head coach, and you give it to the coach or to the players, and you say, next year when you come back for pre-season, like, there's your starting dock, and you go again, like, yeah. So then you're adding to what you did the year before, and that's what I was saying to you about the reflection piece. If we say, oh yeah, like, how many teams? Yeah, we're going to win the championship this year, lads. We're going to give it everything. There's no, like, 100%. Like, we're just no, but yes, we're going on drinking bans, and you can't be missing training. It's just all load. Like, it's that type of commitment, and that type of, with players, in my opinion, now you have to stop trying to hold them accountable and get them to embrace responsibility. And trust me, it's not that it's hard, but sometimes it'll mean there's more speed bumps along the way. But I believe if you've the conviction and the courage to navigate it, your group ends up in a better place. And again, I know there's going to be some coaches listening to this that think, not a hope, that's like, no, that fella's soft, or that's a load of me bollocks. Like, that's fine, but that's the way I believe in doing it. And I find coaches who also see it that way, and I help them bring that to life. And I've gone on journeys with different teams, at soccer teams here at college level, won championships with them, got teams to playoffs that haven't made playoffs before, and you see players growing and taking ownership of it, and coaches giving them that space and knowing that you're there to support them. It's a really, really nice and satisfying journey to be on, to be honest.
Can you describe then what it's like to be around a really good coach? Like, what is, when you said, oh, people might not ever have a good coach, like, what is a good coach then, from what you've seen? You can name them. I'm conscious you might not want to as clients.
From a player's perspective, or say from a mental performance perspective?
Well, I would nearly go out again and say, from all of the hats you've worn in sport, what is the approach that you've found the best? And that's just your opinion.
Yeah, and I don't have it, because there's individually you'll think of different people, but they're very different, but you just knew they were being themselves and they were being genuine and authentic. But I think for me, definitely the first one is just a coach that cares. Like, they care about you, or they care about the group, and you mightn't always like the decisions. I know I had coaches who didn't pick me. I was a sub, and I'd want to rip their heads off, but I'd also go to war for them because I knew they cared about me, and I knew they cared about the group. And if they genuinely weren't picking me and they were picking someone else, they thought the other person was better. And later in life, I kind of realized they were right. And then you go, like, okay, so, like, but how can I add value to the group? How can I still contribute to the group? Like, as a mental performance coach, what that looks like is I find, so there's the care piece, but I also love a coach who's just a really strong vision. And vision's a word that's thrown around now a lot. Oh yeah, what's your team vision? And I would do a lot of work with teams in this space. What is the team vision? Okay, what does that look like? How do we bring that to life every day? How are you going to hold each other accountable in doing that? When things are going well, who's going to spot it and show appreciation? Not flattery, not blowing smoke up someone's backside, but appreciation for it being well. When things aren't going well and they're sliding, who's going to step up and actually say, no, hey, we said we wanted to be this. Today it wasn't that. So okay, we can moan about it for a week, or tomorrow when we come, we can get back to work straight away on it. So strong vision. And then I think to me, with the coaching as well, it's then backing up in their behaviours and their actions, because lots of coaches will say they want one thing in their team, but then when you dig under it and get into it, it's very different. And you know, I've had a coach who call me and be like, yeah, the team is, once the pressure comes on or once the games go into like knockouts, we just can't get over the line. Like, we keep choking. Okay, and they're talking to you. And when they're talking to you, they're very convincing and persuasive and calm and informative, and you learn so much. And you go, okay, I'll come, like, and we'll do a bit of work, or I'll come and have a look. And then you get there and they're like screaming lunatics on the sideline, you know, and you're like, well, like, you're, you know, if you want your team to be calm and posed and focused on the field, and you're screaming and roaring on the sideline, like, they don't join up. Like, there's a discrepancy there between like leadership, actions, and it spreads like a virus. Like, it literally, manager screaming at a player, that player screams back at him, then that player screaming at the ref. Now there's two players screaming at the ref. Those two players are now screaming at another player, and it just like, it flies through a team. Like, panic and that distraction and like lack of focus, it absolutely can fly through a team. But also with the right mental skills, with the right work, with the right preparation, so can focus. Like, so can and that's like the fun part about it. And when players realize how quickly and easily we can flick that switch, and okay, you might lose your head, and that's totally fine because you're a human, but can your teammate beside you help you flick the switch back real quick? If the ideal world is you can do it yourself, that's brilliant. Like, that's what we're all working towards. But also, we're not expecting that immediately. So when you do start sliding, if you are frustrated, if you are distracted, and you're causing, I suppose, if your performance is detrimental to the team or to yourself, can two, three people around you check you on that? Can they remind you of that? Can they give you a trigger that flicks you back? And if they can, that's great. And if they try that and that doesn't work, then you tell them the reality is there's a chance that you could be sitting on the bench. The coach is just going to take you off. At NCAA level over here, you've unlimited substitutions in soccer, for example. So if you're acting the maggot, if you've lost focus, if you're gone, you're just taken off. You can come back on. There's times in my role where the coach will take a fella off and he just points at me and he just has to go down and sit beside me, and we can sit there in silence for 5 minutes, and you say, hey, you ready to talk now? Okay, what's going on? No, take it. Like, come on, like, talk to me. Okay, does that help? You know, are you giving energy? Are you taking away? Are you helping the team, or are you not? And you can flick that switch pretty quickly. And then 5 minutes later, 10 minutes later, and again, if they know, like, that if they can't flick that switch back, they're not going back on. Well, then they have a motivation to, during the week, come and do the work again to figure out how to, and it works. And I've worked with a team that for years had kept losing the playoffs, would finish top of the group, kept losing the playoffs. And then we did the body work. The coach committed to it, both himself, both the team. They've won multiple championships. And it's just cool to see that. And it's cool to see, I'm not saying that from terms of like, I'm not talking about, oh, I'm brilliant. No, it's the players realizing that they can get better and develop. And not only can they get better as individuals, they can actually help each other. And that's one of the things about my work that I love doing is like, yeah, I mightn't be here all the time, but when I am here, I'll give you my best and make an impact. But then how are you going to help each other all the time? Because that's the difference. Like, that's how teams become the, like, I don't know if you ever fully become the best you can be, but that's how you get better.
You reminded me there at the start about the care piece. Owen Cleary said it about Colm Collins, but couldn't put his finger on how Colm showed how much he cared. He was like, I can't really describe it, but I just know he cares about me a lot, and gave a few minor examples. But give us an example of a coach showing care through different styles.
First thing that comes to mind, if I'm being honest, was just as a player. You talk about a coach showing you cared. I would have been having problems with injuries. I needed surgery. Whatever was going on at the time, I was young. I needed surgery. It was falling out of an insurance loophole, or I needed to pay for the insurance, and I needed to pay for the surgery, and the insurance would give it back to me. But I was in college. I didn't have $5,000 or whatever it was to pay for the surgery. Coach paid for himself. So this coach is in the position to be able to do that. He paid for it and was like, just give it back to me whenever the claim comes through. So you talk about someone who really, you think I'm not going to stand up for that person if anyone's ever saying shit about them. Like, whether he picked me or not, I know I've had rows with that person. Like, that's care. Like, that's care in your actions. And you understand, okay, he was able to do it. That's just not that it needs to be monetarily, but that was a big gesture that really landed with me. And then I think the other thing is with coaches, I think it's really important in terms of treating panels across the board, I suppose. And it's very hard in terms of who you give their time to, but it's easy as a coach. Like, I only have these for 5 minutes, so I'll talk to the goalie, I'll talk to the wing back, and I'll talk to the wing forward. But it's quite powerful if a coach walks in and instead of rushing to the people that are starting, if he goes talks to the people who aren't starting and sits down beside one of those and says, how are you doing? How are you feeling about the day? Okay, what are you thinking about when you come in? That's a powerful way to say, hey, listen, like, we're a group and that person cares about, because it just, in dressing rooms, like, there's a hierarchy nature to it. You know, there is, like, every kid, like, I've seen it here. Like, I said to you the NCAA example, or like, I've seen kids react with despondency because they're not starting. There's unlimited substitutions in this game. Like, there's literally, the manager can make 50 changes if he wants. And I was like, you're like, you know, this, because they take disappointment and you understand that there's emotional reaction to it. But it's like, you can come on at any stage. Like, you could, and like, if you turn around and the coach sees you like sitting there sulking, slumping, like, do you think he's going to put you on or no? Like, and actually helping them understand that, you know. And that's the other thing I do as well. Like, I'd see sometimes when you see coaches, like, I maybe because during my playing career, when I got to senior level, you know, I didn't always start. I was backup for quite a chunk of it, to be honest. Like, and so sometimes when I look out, like, when I'm there as a mental performance coach, I always really actively engage the kind of, you know, in GA terms, the 16 to 40, same with soccer, the 12 to 25. But then when you see managers doing that too, like, it really does, in my opinion, like, bring a group together and speed up connection, and like brings, like, adds to that sense of unity. Like, oh, like, even if the game's going on, as a coach now that I work with, like, I'll see him pull lads off the bench, like, come here, like, did you see what he did there, or did you see what's happening? Like, if you go on later, or if you go on the next day, like, I want you to keep an eye, and it's like, that's real good coaching. And then you're on the bench but you feel valued, and that's, I've taken the long way around it. But that's something, as a player and as a mental performance coach, I love coaches that really are serious and take care about making people feel valued and respecting players as people. It's easier said than done when coaches have so much on their plate and so much to do. And I know, for example, when I was the New York manager, like, I definitely carried myself well. I loved talking to players before training, after training. But I know there was times during that season, there was a couple of them wanted to rip the head off my shoulders, like, straight up. But like, they're like, they, once they know they can have space to cool down and have a conversation about it, like, it's always fine, and they respect you for having that conversation. But yeah, like, that's just I think you just gotta, it's just making people feel valued as people, and I think it's a very powerful human thing.
Brilliant. I think we'll leave it there and move on to the sideline 7. The same 7 questions at the end of every episode. Question 1, Alan, your favourite quote?
It probably changes a lot. Like, I'm kind of like that. Like, I'm into, like, teaming and seasonal things and that constant evolving. And if I ask you right now, I'm sitting at my desk, the one quote that is on my wall that I give to you is, it does not matter how slowly you go so long as you do not stop, from Confucius, who I presume was a very wise person. I don't know much about him or her, but it's just something that's very relevant to me in my life right now as a mental performance coach, really doing the work to grow more contacts here again with more teams, like, aspiring to go as far and as high as I can go. There's been breakthroughs, there's been setbacks. I'm trying to get in with sports that have never heard of GAA. They don't know a whole lot about it. You say you're from Ireland and they don't, you know, it's not that they don't care, but like, you're just another, like, so there's been setbacks, but also there's been breakthroughs. And I just keep reminding myself that, like, I'm not going to stop. Like, I'm living my life. I'm being true to myself. I'm doing work I love. And like, it's not a race, you know. Like, I'm a guy I know, a very successful guy years ago, told me that. I went and met him for coffee. Tell him all my plans, business-wise, work-wise, and he was like, whoa, Alan, it's not a race, man. Like, you're like, what age, you know, you got to enjoy life, you got to enjoy what you're doing, and it'll all work out and you'll get there. And at the time, I kind of looked at him, I was like, easy for you to say you're a multi-millionaire, do you know what I mean? But he was right. Like, he was 100% right. And that's the quote. It does not matter how slowly you go, as long as you do not stop.
Very good. Best sporting event you've been to, one as a fan, one as a player/coach?
Oh, fan. I'm a little spoiled because I worked for Crow Park for years in the GA, and so I got to go to so many All-Ireland finals. And I was lucky, I was working at the one where Tip stopped Kilkenny for the 5 in a row, wasn't it? Place was mad that day. It was unreal. So that's one. And then the second one, I went to the Philadelphia Eagles, played the Tampa Bay Buccaneers a couple of years ago, and it was Tom Brady's last season, so I got to see Tom Brady play in the flesh, which was just a really just something that was like a bucket list thing. I just thought, like, you know, you grow up watching documentaries in America's Game and Tom Brady and the Patriots and do your job and just this ice cool killer, and then watching them play and honestly slice and dice the Eagles apart. Unfortunately for me that day, all my in-laws and me now are hardcore fans. Just that's probably what actually, from an Irish perspective, was the All-Ireland final. But what sticks you the most is that just seeing Tom Brady do his thing was like watching supercomputer against old Sega Mega Drive. Like, it was just crazy. Like, just sliced and diced the team up and down the field.
Class. Biggest setback or challenge in your career, and how did you react to it?
I think it's pretty straightforward. Like, that was my mental health challenges when I was 20, 21. Like, having to, like, it took a long time, but actually accepting that I have depression, that I needed help, find the courage to reach out, to go to counselling, to go through that journey, to go through the ups and downs of it for years, to piece it all together. So that's the answer. And then I kind of, without being smart, like, I'm proud of, sometimes it's like, you know, how you don't, like, I'm proud of how I responded to it, but also I'm proud of the work I've done since then, like with the article in the Sunday Independent, like when I did a 2-page article about that experience as a young man. Like, I think it was the first active GA player to kind of go public about it, and then like to have published my book and about that journey. Like, yeah, those setbacks, but I just believe like there's a lot of power in sharing lessons. And, you know, I've said some stuff in the podcast today that I haven't even fully processed or I haven't fully figured out, but like, that's, we're all on a journey, we're all trying to figure out stuff. And I think people, if you're just comfortable sharing it at times, you don't have to share, I'm not saying that, but like, it helps people. And I've listened and read stuff that's helped me, and hopefully this will do the same for someone else.
Biggest achievement on or off the pitch?
Do you want me to answer both or one of them?
Either or, you can pick whatever way you want.
Yeah, I think I would just go off the pitch. I think for me, like, I'm sitting here now talking to you, like, it was just just making the decision to leave Ireland and to move and to not necessarily start a new life. It was like searching for a new life, because I didn't know what I was leaving. I didn't have it all figured out, but it was kind of starting a new adventure and a new journey. And like, I'm sitting here now, like, you know, I know I mentioned the GA earlier and the role they had in getting me here, but it unlocked a new life for me, and I've started a new life here. I still have my friends at home, I still have my family at home, but, you know, like, I met the woman of my dreams, and like, I fell in love here, and like, I get to, like, if you would have told me as a kid sitting in school, whether that was in Dublin first or in Belvoir, that you'd be living in America, that you've got to lived in New York for years, that you'd be living in Pennsylvania, I just would have been like, what are you talking about? And I'm just really proud that, like, in terms of that, like just that achievement or accomplishment, is just like having the courage to kind of take on the unknown and explore it. And I've found my way, and in a way that, like, you know, so it is part of lots of stuff in my life right now is parts of stuff I dreamed of, some of it I couldn't have even dreamed of, and it's still all ahead of me. Like, I've so much living to do and so much learning to do, and kind of excited for that.
Advice to your 18-year-old self?
Buckle up, kiddo. Literally buckle up. It's going to be a hell of a ride, but you're going to learn so much more about yourself and about the world in a way that's going to make you stronger, better, happier. So yeah, enjoy the good days, and you're never alone on your bad days, and you'll get there.
Amazing. Dream dinner guest, and why? You can open up and do a dinner party if you want.
No, I think for me, like, I've been lucky enough to meet lots of different people and interview different people over the years. But honestly, she'd probably give me a gentle slap for saying it. But now in the stage I'm at in my life, like, dream date is just my wife. Like, I just want to, whenever I get that downtime or that opportunity to pop out of the house, is just to have a dinner, to relax, to be at peace, to sit easy, to be content. There's times in my life where I've chased so much and tried to do so much, and I've done so much, you know, failed loads. But I'm just at a point where I'm trying and doing a better job of just that contentment. And like, every time we get to go for dinner, so that there's just joy in it, in a way that as a 20-year-old, you dreamed of having a partner like that. You dreamed of just having that feeling of contentment, and it's just a special thing, and that's what I'm really grateful for.
Final question. If your life was a book, which it is, but what chapter would this be called?
Oh, this is definitely volume 2 that I haven't written yet. It's first one was called The Best Is Yet to Come. But if this was a bonus chapter, I probably I'll go for Run to the Roar. It's I feel like you get to it different times in life where if you're dreaming big or you're close, sometimes you feel like if it's not working out or there's challenges, you kind of people can back away from it. But that actually is a book, Run to the Roar, but it's a phrase I know I've heard different people use in workshops and stuff, and it's basically like the idea is that um, if you hear a lion roaring, instead of running away from it, you run towards it. Like you go towards what you're afraid of, like and don't stop. And that's what it kind of is for me. Like that's where I'm at in terms of the mental performance journey, where like pursuing that, but also pursuing the life I want, which is a balanced life, which is a content life, like is joy of love and connection and compassion and that kind of that work to live rather than live to work. And sometimes the world wants to take you away from all that. So I'll do Run to the Roar because it's a scary thing, but if you don't keep looking for it, you won't find it.
Amazing. If there's anyone listening that wants to reach out, where is the best place to do that?
You can reach out, I was just going to say, just do me email. It's alan@realtalks.ie, or just go to alanomara.com. The socials, I'm not great on anymore. I'm on them. They can find, like, I'm on Instagram as AOM the cat. But in general, I would just alanomara.com is your best bet. There's a bit of information there about my work, the workshops, a bit about me. And yeah, if anyone's any questions or listen to this or wants to reach out, please feel free to do so.
Brilliant. Well, Alan, huge thanks and best of luck with everything that you're doing over there. Looking forward to hearing what you get up to the next couple of years.
No problem at all. Thanks for your time. I enjoyed the conversation. I think you had tried to get me to do this a while ago, and I just didn't really want to do media stuff. So it was nice to chat to you and appreciate it. And you keep up the good work as well. I know I said it to you, but podcasts have helped me at different times. I've recorded them because I know they help people as well. And if this conversation particularly helps coaches or players or whatever deal with anything we talk about, it's great and good for you. Keep doing it.
Amazing. Thanks a million.